Hi, I'm Neal Bawa, and I'm on Brian's show, and I'm going to be demystifying AI and telling you 24 different ways in which you can use AI to turbocharge your real estate business.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owners Association, where real estate investors have found success since 1968. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group. This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB & Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com. Hello and welcome to episode 552. Many investors are now using some form of AI in their daily businesses, but most are barely scratching the surface of what is possible. My guest today is doing something completely different. Neal Bawa is the CEO of Grocapitus, where he runs a $436 million AI-powered portfolio. His team uses machine intelligence to screen 6,500 land parcels a year, digest 100-page market reports in seconds, and build rent comp data sets at a scale no analyst team could ever match. Today, we're talking about what it actually means to run an AI-first real estate company, how it changes the way you find markets, underwrite deals, and manage risk. Neal, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me on the show again. AI is a topic that I'm passionate about, and I'm actually more passionate about applying it to real estate. So I'm glad we're getting to talk about that.
Really looking forward to hearing how you're applying it to your portfolio. Tell us a little bit about that.
The first thing that we did 1 year ago, we basically switched so that our company was an AI-first company, and that required a tremendous mindset change for people in the company. So we as a company, we're a small company, 20 employees, we basically use EOS, or based on the book Traction, written by Gene Wickman. EOS is the entrepreneurial operating system, and it's basically an operating system for how a company should work, Monday morning meetings, goals that each team sets and how they track those goals, the spreadsheets that they use. There's a lot that goes into it. And so what we did was we first put AI into that. So every single team and every single member in our company, now when they pick their quarterly goals with their managers, one of those quarterly goals has to be specific to AI. So, and this has been true for the last year. And we basically said, well, there are going to be different levels within the company. And so all of your future compensation and bonuses are now tied to AI. So if you basically didn't move up certain levels, you would not be eligible for bonuses. So think of, silver, gold, and platinum. Well, you couldn't even get to the gold and platinum levels for bonuses or salary increases unless you had reached a certain level of AI competence. What we did was we took the 6 people in the company that loved AI or just naturally gravitated towards it, and we called them AI captains. Those captains then met once in a week, and they sort of decided what courses they were going to teach about AI, what products they were going to try out. And then each week, the entire company meets in something known as an AI Sparkle, which is some employee of the company that's doing something really, really cool with AI, and that person then sparkles for 15 minutes and shows something off, and everyone else, tries it. We have a channel, a Slack channel that is about AI, and each team, not team member, but each team posts at least one Slack a week about what they're doing with AI. So we started with phases, and we're now currently in phase 4. The first phase was that everyone in the company would be extremely comfortable using ChatGPT, so just the basics of AI. And this itself actually was not easy because people would say, hey, I'm comfortable using ChatGPT. The question was, no, phase 1 isn't about you being comfortable using ChatGPT. It's about you showing us that you use it all the time in your work. For example, 100% of our investor updates are now written by ChatGPT. Now, of course, we edit them because it gets it wrong or sometimes has the wrong context, but they're written that way. And so this was part of phase 1. So firstly, every employee in the company was told that you have to use an AI transcript device in every single meeting. We're a remote company. People are all over the US because our properties are all over the US. So people meet via Zoom. And so we bought a tool called Fathom, and everyone in the company had it. And you were not allowed to come into meetings without the Fathom tool running. This meant that 100% of all of our meetings were recorded and we had transcripts for them. And so people were then using those transcripts to basically send out action items after the meeting, but they were not allowed to even use the Fathom action item list. They had to take the transcript, put it into ChatGPT, train ChatGPT so it knew what it was doing. We call these custom GPTs. So if you're not familiar with them, watch a video on what custom GPTs are. The company had a goal of having 300 custom GPTs in 6 months. We hit it in 4 months. So a custom GPT is simply different from a string. In a string, you ask ChatGPT a question and it gives you an answer. In a custom GPT, you train it and say, hey, your job is to write investor updates. And here are the things you can do. Here's the tone. Here's what you're going to say. Here's how long you're going to make it. Here's the graphics you're going to create. So you train that string. And then after that, the only thing you ever give that string is the actual transcript. So let's say you meet with the property manager every week and you're writing an investor update every month. Then you simply throw 4 transcripts into that trained custom GPT. Nothing else, no instructions, because it's already trained. It takes those 4 transcripts and it writes the investor update and outputs it. It may publish it to a Slack channel. It may publish it to Google Drive. But essentially, that string is now trained. So that's fundamentally different from conversations with ChatGPT. And because we had a goal of having 300 of these trained custom GPTs, everyone got through level 1. So I can proudly say that by the end of last year, every single employee, Brian, was beyond level 1 and we had moved on to level 2.
Is a custom GPT very similar to like a Claude skill? You train it how to do it and then it can repeat that over and over again?
So same concept. So, our company has licenses for everyone for both ChatGPT and Claude. So we use both, but we didn't use Claude in phase 1 at all because we were still trying to get everyone comfortable. But a custom GPT is that. So a custom GPT can be given separate instructions, and it's easier to share a custom GPT across a department. So you go into your ChatGPT and you say, I want to create a custom GPT. You can give it instructions. You can say, I want to share it with an entire team or with the entire company. That's very hard to do with a conversation string if you want to do it properly and assign permissions. But custom GPTs are built in. So yes, it's a skill, but it actually is not exactly a skill. So I think there's an 80% overlap between a Claude skill and a ChatGPT custom GPT.
You're using a transcript program, Fathom. I use Otter AI, which really helps because I'll take the transcript and then it becomes part of the memory bank. Here's the update on these things. Are you doing the same thing I'm doing, which is exporting the transcript and then dropping it into ChatGPT, or have you figured out a Zapier link or anything between the two?
So in phase 1, we basically learned how to do things manually. In phase 2, each team had to figure out either to use the tool itself to automate those things, or it had to use a third-party tool called Zapier. We started by using Zapier. So think of Zapier, for those who don't know, as a translator, right? I speak Japanese, Brian speaks English. I don't speak, English, so I need a translator. Zapier is that translator. So you connect, Brian to the translator, and then you connect the translator to me. And now we can basically speak that way. That's what Zapier does. It's a well-known tool and has been around for a long time. So we started using that. But as we started using it, the tools themselves got better. For example, ChatGPT came out with a connector for Slack. So there was a Slack integration, there was a Google Drive integration, and Asana integration. But there was not integration with Fathom. So what we did was we upgraded. So everyone in the company has Zoom licenses. So we upgraded to Zoom Enterprise, which comes in with all the transcript tools, and we got rid of Fathom. There is a connector for Zoom inside ChatGPT. So now we created second level products where the transcript would automatically after the meeting go into ChatGPT, and from there the result would be spit out into Slack, and the action items would be added with ChatGPT, and we automated it. This took us about 2 to 3 months, but we were able to do that across the board in the company for our 4 primary tools, which are Zoom, Slack, Asana, and Google Drive. So now our tools were basically able to do those things. Now in phase 2, we did not attempt to write files on Google Drive because it was not working at all, right? It just would not work. It was not, we were just spending so much time, wasting time that we didn't attempt it in phase 2. But when ChatGPT 5.3 came out, that's when the Google Drive connector became, working. And now, of course, the transcripts are saved on Google Drives. All investor updates are saved there.
So you've done something that is very difficult for companies to do, which is get their employees to be AI first. Because a lot of times it's people in the upper levels know that AI should be used, but they don't know how to integrate it. Now, with you and your company, I mean, I'd imagine, that this is right up your alley, AI and how to leverage it. But it's I think it's kind of rare based on what I've read for companies to embrace AI the way that yours has. So can you just talk about that a little bit? Being AI first, what that really means. And you just described the steps that your company took to get there, but how difficult was it to get your employees to embrace that the way you have?
It was less difficult than you might think. And I think it's going to be more difficult for other companies. Firstly, I'm very technical, and my investors, my employees know that, right? We have technical discussions unrelated to AI all the time in the company. So there's an expectation in our company that you're going to be techie, you're going to use a lot of software, you're going to use a lot of systems. It's just an expectation. Those are the sort of employees that tend to rise to the top because it's a very technical company. When the CEO is a computer science graduate, it changes the people that we hire and the way that we work. So I think that was easier. But what really made it work was not the fact that I was the one pushing AI. Yes, AI needs to be pushed from the top. The CEO needs to push it. But I think it's more than that. We basically built it into all of our systems, including HR. You couldn't get a bonus if you weren't AI certified. And there was a certification program inside of the company. You couldn't get a higher tier. You couldn't get a salary increase. So we basically set minimum benchmarks and we set goals. If you were not done with phase one by the end of 2025, you could no longer be employed at the company, right? So we basically had carrot and stick. We had bonuses. We had prizes. Every week, people were winning $50, $100 gift certificates because we were saving incredible amounts of money by doing this. So we didn't mind having a $50, $100 gift certificate every week. We were giving salary increases to people that were AI captains simply because they were AI captains and they were sort of helping this process. So, so phase one basically was the custom GPT stuff, and getting everyone certified. And phase two was connecting all of our tools together, except for Google Drive, which we connected in phase three when we started getting into Claude and custom applications. So if you want, I can describe phase three.
I got to ask you about the jobs, because the fear about AI is it's going to eliminate jobs. Now, your company, I think, is a perfect microcosm because you've got everyone on board with AI. Would you say that has allowed you to kind of scale back on your workforce, or is it just providing these tools that are exponentially increasing the capability of your existing workforce?
A little bit of both. So we've saved a lot of payroll, but it was for new employees, for growth. We just didn't need people to grow because people in the company were able to take on a much greater workload. But we have not, cut our payroll costs because of AI. And I don't think it works well that way, to be honest. So if we had, let's say, if we were Chase and we had 600 people sitting in a room coding or 1,200 people making phone calls, unquestionably, AI would reduce that workforce. There's no doubt in my mind. But when you're a small company of 20 people doing, with 8 different departments, each department has 2 people or 3 people, and it's fundamentally difficult to, reduce that through AI. What we were able to do is get people to do more work, get the company to be more compliant, reach out to more investors, do more marketing for investors and tenants, and fundamentally be a company where people work less. I mean, on average, I think our employees are now working 1.5 hours less than they were a year and a half ago before we started this entire process. So it's had benefits for employees, benefits for management, in that there were 3 or 4 jobs that would have had open requisitions that we just closed the requisitions on because people were able to take them on. So essentially, we've managed to grow the company without growing the workforce, and that's what we've gotten out of AI.
And what would you say about output? Have you increased output and capabilities at the same time?
Tremendously. So basically, we've been able to get to the point where a lot of the grunge work which was being done by our Philippines team has been moved to AI. AI is doing the grunge work, and the Philippines team has basically started moving up the stack. So our US team is doing sort of similar things, but overall everyone's able to do maybe 10 to 15% more work and work 10 to 15% less.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com. If you're thinking of leaving your W-2 job and becoming a full-time real estate investor, one of the greatest costs you must consider is healthcare for you and your family. When I made this transition myself, I found the whole healthcare insurance process to be confusing and frustrating. That's why I'm glad I met Chad Creasy at RCB and Associates. Chad is a professional health insurance agent who helps real estate investors and small business owners understand and choose their best healthcare options. And best of all, his services are covered by the insurance company and won't cost you a dime. If you live in Michigan and are expecting a change in your healthcare insurance coverage for any reason, or losing employer coverage or transitioning into Medicare, then you owe it to yourself to contact Chad Creasy at rcbassociatesllc.com. Well, let's talk about level 3. I'd love to hear what that involves.
Last year, in about September, October, we started hitting the limits of ChatGPT as it stood then. None of those limits exist today, but back then we were very frustrated because ChatGPT wouldn't write things to Google Drive. It wouldn't very easily reach outside of the company and scrape stuff. Like, for example, we wanted to do rent comps and we wanted to automate that process. So can you imagine a company that is, underwriting 10, 15 properties, per week, is doing massive numbers of rent comp work, and our Philippines team was doing that. We wanted to automate it. We tried ChatGPT. It was a disaster. We then tried a third-party tool called Manus, which was a Chinese tool back then. The company moved to Singapore and then were purchased by Meta, by Facebook, for $2 billion about 4 or 5 months after we started using it. And Meta was fine, but we wanted something that was more sort of enterprise level. And so eventually we heard of Anthropic Claude. And so we bought one Claude license. We automated all of our rent comps. Then we bought another license and we started to automate, what did we do? Underwriting. So our first level underwriting is now done by Claude. We could not get ChatGPT to do that in a way that we weren't paranoid about it making mistakes. What we did do successfully is that Claude now does all of our rent comps. It does all of our underwriting, and then ChatGPT checks it. So it's basically, we have another tool that we're paying for. So it basically checks the other tool's work, and it does a great job. And it does find errors from time to time. Claude is very good at scraping the web. So basically, if you wanted to go to apartments.com, click on a link, select a drop down, say, I only want 1-bedroom rent comps, or I only want rent comps that are more, 2 miles from my property, but not more. It has the ability to do all of those things. It can get pretty expensive. So we came up with a bunch of hacks. We installed a tool that is sort of an intermediate tool that does some of the scraping so that we could reduce our cost on Claude. But essentially, Claude allowed us to start doing real automation where we weren't just looking at asking a question, getting an answer, and then copy pasting that into Slack or whatever. We were now doing stuff outside the company. For example, here's an example. We have 7 different property management systems, Entrada, ERD, RealPage, Buildium. And the biggest problem that we have is we want to have one consistent dashboard that shows us how each property is doing, and their dashboards look completely different. Their software their stuff looks completely different. We couldn't get ChatGPT to do that consistently. So what we did was we started using Claude Code, which is a much better tool than Claude Cowork. So Claude has 3 forms. Claude Chat is just like ChatGPT. There's no real difference. Claude Cowork allows you to use your computer, any one computer, and put files on it, and then have it interact with those files. And it also goes out to the web and does stuff. Claude Code takes it to the next level because now you can host entire code repositories on the web, so you're not reliant on any employee's computer crashing or files being there. Everything is on the web, and it's connected back to your Google Drive and Slack and Asana. So essentially, Claude allowed us to evolve to the next level where it started doing more things. So one of the things that we set up with Claude is we now have logins into our 7 property management systems across dozen properties. And it basically goes out there, logs in, fetches the information. Then it rationalizes the information into an internal database. And because one property manager might call it account number, the other one might call it account, right? There has to be some way of rationalizing if you want to compare properties together and build a dashboard with interactive, stuff. Claude was the first one that could build dashboards, right? ChatGPT could think about little dashboards, but really what ChatGPT thinks of dashboard is Excel. Well, Claude was building magnificent, high-end, enterprise-level dashboards with drop-downs, checkboxes, tabs, and stuff like that. And then it was also building the logic for all the data that was flowing into those with a little back-end database. Now, all of this was still rudimentary because one flaw was that Claude still wanted all that stuff to be on the local computer, which we hate because what if that employee's computer goes bad? What if that computer's in the Philippines and goes back? Now, all this data has to be on that computer. And so phase 4, which we started 3 months ago, was an evolution where we said, everyone in the company now needs to be a programmer. So our current status, phase 4 is simply these words. Everyone is a programmer. Now, this doesn't mean that anyone in our company writes code or anyone in our company knows how to write code. There's no requirement for that. But there's a large amount of competencies that go with that. You need to understand code spaces, GitHub. You need to understand backup and sync. You need to understand what a JSON file is, right? Which is how the Claude. And you need to be able to feel comfortable with seeing code running on the screen, right? And basically say to it, we believe that only 1% of companies do that. All of our Claude installations now are on the web in a tool called GitHub. If you're a programmer, everyone knows about GitHub. GitHub is owned by Microsoft, multi-billion-dollar company. There are tens of millions of programmers using GitHub. And programmers working together. It stores their code, the software code that they write. The code is these days written universally in a language called Python. When I was programming 20 years ago, it used to be called Perl, but today it's Python. And so GitHub allows dozens or hundreds or thousands of different developers to work together and have a repository, not overwrite each other's work. There's a tool in GitHub called Code Spaces, and Code Spaces allows you to integrate Claude. So now, over the last 3 months, all of our Claude licenses are in the web, in the cloud, right? And all of the stuff that we're doing is now in the cloud and written down in those cloud instances. Each team has their own Claude account. They go in and they basically create custom software. So we've evolved from the point of doing investor updates to writing dashboards with Claude to now writing software. So now there's 7 or 8 people in the company writing software. And the software is web hosted, it's browser hosted, and it lives on one of our URLs. I won't tell you what it is because we don't have all of the security set up. But just like if you go to grocapitus.com, my company, you're probably an investor or a vendor or a property manager. But there's another URL, right, that is just for employees. And it has Google permissions. We all have, Google Suite accounts, so basically has permissions through Google. So somebody leaves dozens of applications that the company is using. Then and for you to slice and dice, filter. These are interactive applications. They have settings. They have, version numbers, right? So we've gotten to the point where our employees are writing thousands of lines of code and integrating them with other departments' codes on a web server. And that is phase 4 and has been running for 3 months. And now we currently only have 1/3 of our employees competent enough to do this. They're still screwing up. They're still making mistakes. Some of their apps don't work. Some of their apps work and then stop working. And all of this is done through Claude. All of it is done through a model called Haiku, Haiku. We use the main Claude model. It's called Sonnet. That's what most people use. And we would run out of tokens. It's a 7-day refresh cycle. We'd run out of tokens in 1 day. So we universally switched to Haiku, which is a little dumber and makes more mistakes, but our tokens last the entire week. So we're still on the $25 Claude account for everyone, not the $100 or $200 a month account, and it's working beautifully. So Code Spaces and Claude are magic together. So we are now a company of programmers.
We got a little bit of a transmission problem. You did freeze up a little there. So if you're listening to this or watching this after the fact, that is a technical issue, and I apologize for that. But I have a question for you about just the everything you're doing is amazing. How much is it actually helping you with the asset management and improving, the productivity of the properties that you're asset managing, increasing revenue? Or is it mostly just kind of helping streamline the functions of your staff and the behind the scenes works?
Phase 1, phase 2, and 3 was mostly streamlined. Phase 4 is all about asset management. Phase 4, our predominant focus, 80-90%, is on asset management. And so for the first time, we have the ability to simultaneously pull data on a weekly basis from 7 different property management systems, rationalize that data so it all works together in a database called MySQL. It's running on our code space. That data gets pulled in, and we have the ability to toggle our properties and see what they're doing versus each other in tabs. We have the ability to compare them. We have the ability to rank our property managers. So imagine going into a Monday morning meeting where with every other company, you get this Excel spreadsheet. Most companies have this Excel spreadsheet with occupancy, delinquency, leasing, NTV, stuff like that, right? That's what they're used to. But at the same time, towards the end of the meeting, imagine somebody dragging over a beautiful dashboard, like high-level enterprise, $1 million kind of stuff. And there you can see from a property management perspective, lead management perspective, closing perspective, how are you ranked amongst all of our properties? Do we have to say anything? If you're 6th or 7th, if the property manager is ranked 7 out of 10, do we have to say anything? If that particular property is taking 3 hours to get back to a lead and the average is an hour and the property at the top is doing it in 45 minutes, right? This is the average response time to a lead. Do you have to say anything? No. For the first time, and I've been dreaming about this for a very, very long time, and it's still not fully built. There's still some properties that we haven't been able to integrate because we don't have good enough access into them. What I can tell you is by the end of this year, I will have something that I don't think companies 10 times my size can say, or at least show. People can say whatever they want. I will have the ability to have a web dashboard that shows and compares every aspect of my properties on a week-to-week basis for things that go beyond occupancy and delinquency, because that's what everybody has in that Excel spreadsheet. I'm actually comparing raw performance. I'm comparing how many phone calls they're making, how many text messages they're saying, how long do they take to return phone calls? How long do they take to make that initial phone call from the time that the lead comes in? What percentage of their leads are they processing properly? A properly processed lead in the industry, the rule is 3 phone calls, 3 text messages, right? And emails if you want to, but really phone calls and text messages. Did you know that when 99% of property managers are not compliant with that best practice? 99% of leads do not get 3 phone calls, 3 text messages. Most don't even get a second phone call, right? When we say we're managing our properties, what we're really saying is we're doing what we can, not doing what's possible, not doing what's right. We're saying what we think is possible or practical. With AI, you no longer have to be practical. You can dream big dreams. You can say, this software used to take $1 million to build and a year to build, but my team is going to build it. We're not going to spend a single dollar building it. My team is going to build it, and we're going to build it in 2 to 3 months. And we're going to have an enterprise software that nobody has. Like owners with 20,000 units. I bet you this, I will give you $1,000 right here, right now, if you can prove that your dashboard is better than mine.
Yeah, if they've got 20,000 units, they're a legacy company and they're going to keep doing it the same old way because they don't know how to shift like you do.
What's most importantly is all of our dashboards are designed by our employees. The total number of consultants that we have hired over the last 18 months for AI is 0.
I want to add to what you're saying and just kind of tell you what I've been doing with Claude. And I'm not a programmer. I'm not using Claude Code. I'm actually working out of the Claude chat and the projects that I build in there. But I'm able to send Claude into the Chrome browser where it has control. And because it has control, it can now get into AppFolio, which is our property management software. And it can do deep dive audits where, it's like having X-ray vision, where not only is it telling me what's going right, what's going wrong, but it can be very specific on the steps that need to be taken to fix it. And 80% of the time, it can fix it for me.
That's not phase 1. That's phase 2, some phase 3. So you're doing a lot of great stuff, right? The challenge with giving Claude access to Chrome is it does it very slowly. So what you should ask Claude to do is to basically switch over to code. You'll get used to it, and install Playwright. Playwright. It's a much better software for controlling browsers. It's free. It's open source, and Claude Code will know how to install it. So start playing with Playwright, and it'll be faster. And you'll get better results when you're basically doing anything with browser control.
What's the next step? You talked about by the end of the year where you're going to be. What do you see with AI and the next 5 years? What is that going to turn your business into?
One of the things is that this methodology, this dashboarding system that we're using, we want to see if there's value in offering this to the top 50 companies in the US by basically showing our dashboards to them and saying, we can create these dashboards for you. Because when we built this, do you remember talking with me at the beginning of the interview about Claude skills, right? So what we're doing is we're basically building best practices and saving them on our web servers. And that best practice is not really designed for our company. It's just a best practice of what to do with, let's say, Buildium. So for example, Buildium is actually a very painful property management software because they do everything differently. Their files, their access is very different from, let's say, AppFolio or Yardi or RealPage, right? Well, we built basically a Buildium demystifier, and that saves humongous amounts of time because it took tens of hours to debug this software. And now I have a tool which will save anybody that is looking to integrate Buildium with AppFolio, because I basically have a Buildium demystifier and AppFolio demystifier that I've already built, and it's in my Git, stored it in GitHub. Sorry, getting technical there for a moment. So if I go into an enterprise company and I say, okay, I will build these dashboards for you, I can simply call my Git, right? And in a few seconds, their Buildium demystifier is installed. In a few seconds, not a few minutes. So I think these are very powerful tools, and we should consider essentially creating a division that only serves the top 50 companies in the US and basically builds this kind of product for them. So that's sort of one thing that we're looking at, and I'd love to talk with people in your audience that feel that they are the right kind of people to do these kinds of things, because I don't have the time to do them. I mean, I got companies to run. So that's one piece of it. The second piece of it is that we are looking to move into phase 5, and phase 5 is voice and video, right? So we want to get to the point where 100% of incoming calls at our properties are being managed by AI. Right now, human beings pick up the phone. And so we want to get to the point where it's just always AI 24 hours a day that picks up the call and talks with you. It's easy to say this. There's a whole bunch of tools out there. 99% of them don't work. It's just nonsense. It's garbage. And if you really want to make it work, you have to spend months and months tuning these tools to understand your company, your property. It's, there's just a lot of tuning and a lot of learning that these tools have to do. So we want to basically build those learning buckets and apply them to voice and apply them to video and all kinds of things. So that's sort of phase 5.
Are you going to build that, or are you going to use an off-the-shelf product for that?
Definitely off-the-shelf products, though we will connect it with Claude and with other things that we're doing. So there'll be a connection back to our company, but there's plenty of off-the-shelf products, so we're going to use those. And they're getting commoditized, so we're not paying a huge amount for them. One of the key things that's happening right now is commoditizations, stuff. I mean, if a guy like me, who hasn't programmed for 22 years, can build, then software is commoditized. So, we're paying less than we should be, and everyone's going to pay less for software in the future.
Tell our listeners and viewers how they can find out more about you, get a hold of you. I know you do a lot of training, a lot of speaking, so please feel free to promote whatever you'd like.
So the best way to connect with us is multifamilyu.com/club, right? Multifamilyu, don't forget the u.com/club. This is our always free club. It's an information club. We do not provide paid training. We have no intention of providing paid training. There's no upsell. There's no senior tier that's paid. It's like pay $50 a month and you get this. Nothing like that. It's free and always will be free. It's like a Wikipedia of real estate information. Obviously, you'll see seminars, my Airbnb, and then anything else that catches our fancy, like impact of climate change on real estate. So we do 8 webinars a year. We do not provide paid education, so you can't get mentoring from us, but you can get a huge amount of information. 1% of the people, we have tens of thousands of people that watch our webinars. 1% of those people become investors with us. The remaining 99, and some have been in our database for 10 years, attending every webinar. There's one lady in Vegas that's attended every webinar we've had for the last 10 years. She's never invested with us. And that, it doesn't matter to us, right? Our job is to basically get our philosophy of investing, and you got a little hint of that, from what we're doing with AI. But even before AI, we were doing these kinds of things, right? AI just makes them simpler. They definitely allows you to do it faster, better, cheaper. But if people like our philosophy, then 1% of them invest with us. We don't spend a lot of time, pushing our products. Even in our webinars, we have a 60-second little clip on, marketing whatever deal we have. And the rest of it is just an informational webinar. All of it is multifamilyu.com/club, and it's always free.
We're recording this mid-May. By the time this comes out, it will be early August of 2026. What's your prediction as to where interest rates are heading between now and then?
No rate cuts this year. I realize that Donald Trump wants one or two or six. He's not going to get any.
We just got an inflation report that was pretty high. Do you think that rates will be going up between now and August?
Trump has too many votes for rates to go up.
It's always a pleasure having you on the show, and I'm obsessed with AI, just scratching the surface of what you just talked about. But I really appreciate you sharing very specifically, how you're leveraging AI, what you're using, how you're using it to achieve different results. It's been a really fascinating conversation. So thanks so much for coming back to the show and having it with us.
Thanks for having me on the show again.
I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group, and you can find out more about me by going to higinvestor.com. That's higinvestor.com. This episode was sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymg.com. And RCB and Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.